Yes, we have Steve Luce, I see over here, and Kirsten Morell is here. The new constable from St. John is here. But other than that, everybody is as usual.
So good evening, and I'm so thrilled to see so many of you. We were wondering whether to change the date and change the time, and we thought, it's fixed. We're going to get on with it. Anyway, just a little bit about housekeeping, and that is that everyone has to be tracked and traced, which is the rule at the moment. And so anyone who hasn't signed or been on Eventbrite, then please make sure before you leave that your name is given to our desks at the back. A word about us. This is a small group of people who have been carefully following the information concerning the building of a new hospital, some of them as long as 5 years ago. And the reason why we have organized this evening tonight is to inform you of the events that have taken place or not taken place and the information that we've been able to gather. It's very difficult to gather information from the States about anything to do with the hospital. I know that many of you here tonight might say, we are fed up, just build it. Well, we agree. We're not trying to hold things up. We're trying to get the correct hospital in the correct place with the correct things in it and at a sustainable price. We hope to show you by our speakers tonight why we are so worried this is the most expensive thing that Jersey has ever embarked on and could end with future generations paying for the rest of their lives. This is something we cannot face. So I hope there will be time for questions at the end before you all depart. And now I want to hand over to our chairman, Peter Funk, who has insisted he is only an interim chairman, but we don't want to let him go because he has sustained us with his patience, his calm, his understanding, and always with a smile. Thank you, Peter.
I wasn't expecting that introduction at all. My first boss said a title and a nickel will buy you a pack of gum, and that was when a pack of gum cost about 2p. Anyway, this evening we have 6 members of our steering group who are going to present a kind of a cross-section of what we have been following with our hospital project and with the Jersey Care model. We're going to provide you, hopefully, with a bit of an overview, and we're going to follow with a question and answer period and give you all a chance to participate. I realize that soccer is looming, so we're going to try and get through as close to 8 o'clock as we can, and if you wish to leave and not stay for the question and answers, that would be fine. First, this evening, I am pleased to introduce you to Sir Philip Balihache, who we all know very, very well. Philip, as we know, served as our bailiff from 1995 to 2009. He then, having presided over our courts and our State's Assembly, he bravely ran for senator when most of us would have seriously retired. And he was elected a senator in 2011. He stood down in our last election, before our last election in 2018. He has been a steadfast friend of Friends of our new hospital and a supporter for some years, and we're very appreciative of his coming along tonight to say a few words to us. Sir Philip.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and may I begin by thanking the friends of our new hospital for their invitation to say a few words at the beginning of this public meeting. Like many of you, I have long admired the approach of the Friends to the hospital project, even as to the naming of the organisation, which makes it clear that the object is to offer friendly, constructive criticism and advice, which should always be welcome. The bulletins, which are published from time to time, are absolute models of succinct and informative prose, which identify issues upon which there are concerns and invite responses. If only the impenetrable reports accompanying the Jersey Care Model proposition had had a Friends-type bulletin explaining what it was all about. It is disappointing that the reaction to this constructive criticism is not always as positive as it should be. Indeed, I would go further and say that unless we get greater transparency from the Health Department and the hospital project team, I fear that we are heading for a collision which will be damaging for Jersey. Like many others, I am sure, I read with incredulity the reaction of the health officials attending the Public Accounts Committee last week, who stated that a performance report will not be published because the document might be presented in a way that could be sensationalized by the media. Nothing, it seems to me, is more likely to lead to a sensation than a refusal to publish a report on the performance of those who have decided not to publish it. The whole purpose of a performance report is to enable comments and criticisms to be made which will hopefully improve performance. Another reason given for the failure to publish the report was that it might put people off from using health services. But if the report does reveal a poor performance in a particular section, surely the public is entitled to know about it. It is up to that section to put matters right and to persuade the public that they have done so. That is the whole point of these reviews. What do ministers think about this? The Minister of Health has been strangely silent, and one wonders whether he had in fact been consulted by his officials before this extraordinary decision was taken. And the Chief Minister has yet to give any assurance that the report itself will be published. Sadly, this fear of criticism, or even worse, indifference to it, seems to be endemic in the Health Department. It may be one of the causes of the lack of transparency which has now become serious enough to threaten democratic processes. It is for all these reasons that I welcome this public meeting and the determination of the Friends group to draw attention to issues which deserve discussion. Having been in government myself, I do appreciate the difficulty of distinguishing white noise, the clamour made by a small minority of disaffected individuals, from genuine discontent and serious concerns on the part of most of the public. I accept that it is not always easy to make that distinction. I can only say that most of the people to whom I have spoken think that Overdale is not the right place to build a hospital. In fact, many of them think that it would be an environmental disaster of major proportions. The site selection process was a cynical and indefensible travesty of the way in which democracy should take place. It is more than disappointing that a majority of states members succumbed and agreed to approve the site at Overdale. The question is what, if anything, can now be done? I do not know the answer to that question, but the presence of a relatively large number of people on a night when football is calling us in other directions is evidence that there is a real public interest and concern about these issues. And I do know that informed public debate about the Jersey care model, about its implications for primary care and hospital treatments, about exactly what kind of hospital we are going to get, and the environmental and financial consequences of building a hospital at Overdale is long overdue. It seems to me that the government should recognise that fact and share its thinking on this, the largest and most important investment of public money ever undertaken in Jersey's history. Something has gone badly wrong when a meeting to inform the residents of St Helier about the new road collapses because the residents are dissatisfied with the information that they have been given. Something has gone badly wrong when the president of the Jersey Bowling Club must write to the Jersey Evening Post complaining that his club, about to lose its 100-year-old home to a new highway, may disintegrate simply because of the uncertainty surrounding its future premises. Despite all the expensive consultants and officials engaged, the whole process has been very badly handled. Surely the Bowls Club premises issue could have been settled before the states decided on Overdale. Surely they could have decided how many people would lose their homes before the debate. There is a carelessness and an ignorance of Jersey values about the whole hospital project which are deeply disturbing. This is not how things ought to be done, nor how we should be feeling about a project which should be uniting islanders in enthusiasm. So I am delighted, ladies and gentlemen, to open the conference, and I look forward very much to the discussion which is to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Philip. I'd like to now introduce you to Andy Howell, who will. Andy is a doctor of dentistry who has practiced for many years here in Jersey. She's married to a doctor. She has 2 kids who are doctors, and as a result, she has a very strong voice in things medical here on our island and about healthcare. Andy.
Thank you all so much for coming. It's lovely to see you, especially on this evening when you're giving up the football. The question is, why are we building a new hospital without all the facilities that we need? The proposed new hospital is to be an acute hospital. At the moment, islanders receive treatment in the Gloucester Street main hospital and also at Overdale. But in order to develop Overdale, the project team have decided to demolish everything currently on the site. That includes the Westmount building, the Poplars Centre, and the William Knott Centre. The proposals mean that with 1 or 2 exceptions, all the facilities and services which islanders enjoy at Overdale at the moment are to be moved to Lekeneve Old School. Now, back in November 2020, a specification or functional brief was released about the design of the new hospital. And it said it would focus on acute treatment and that outpatient appointments will be reduced, transferred to other settings, or there will be remote provision. It states that long-term conditions will be increasingly managed in primary care. The functional brief makes no mention of any of the services that we currently receive at Overdale. So where will we go for our treatment and our care for our long-term conditions? I think they mentioned when they were going around the parishes that there might be hubs dotted around the island. But a couple of weeks ago they said, oh no, we're not having hubs anymore. It's just the lack of information that is of great concern to us all. We need to know the details of where our care is to take place, who will provide our care, and how much it will cost. Over the last few months, we have learnt that the dental department is now going to stay down at Newgate Street. Oh, but I don't think there's even going to be a surgery for our oral surgeon in the new hospital. The laundry staying at Five Oaks, and long-term adult mental health is to remain at Clinic Pinnell, Rosewood House, Oak and Maple wards in St Saviour's. It would seem that this is not the promised all on one site new hospital. In fact, in this new hospital, there's no hydrotherapy pool, no physiotherapy or occupational therapy departments. So where's the equipment going to be stored? Where will be the base for our physiotherapists and occupational therapists? Does this mean, where are we going to receive our care? Does this mean we've got to go to a private physiotherapist? And if that's the case, who is going to pay? There won't either be a rehabilitation ward. And Graham is going to speak about that further after me. I think the difficulty with the hospital design presented to date is that it is being developed based on this Jersey care model. Yet the model does not exist. A Jersey no care model. It is cited that more care will take place in the community and in people's homes, and whilst appreciating that the best place to heal is at home, this can only apply if you have a suitable home with people around who can help with your care, the financial security to support you, and only then if there are the community resources in place, the doctors, nurses, carers to support you, and additional money has been invested in the service. Those, for example, who live alone in small flats, up 2 or 3 flights of stairs with no lift and no family or friends and limited financial means, will not heal well at home. There needs to be provision for them. There has to be a backup. And sometimes, with the limited resources available, we've learnt on Jersey that it's more cost-effective and productive to have a central clinic rather than have our valuable staff driving round the island. Worryingly, to plan, that's just to plan for the Jersey care model, £58 million is being taken, siphoned off from our health insurance fund over the next 4 years. What is this money to be spent on? We know they have employed 17 project managers at a cost of £900,000 per annum. If we say this, round this up to 4 million, what are they going to spend the remaining £54 million on? The health insurance fund is our contributory fund, paid into by you and me for our prescriptions and for part of our GP consultation costs. The aim of the scheme was always as a co-payment system, the insurance fund and the patient sharing the GP costs 50-50. Unfortunately, with our government, GPs have not had an increase in this rebate for the last 10 years. During this time, GP expenses have risen considerably. They have to pay their insurance, staff costs, utility bills, IT, etc. So this means the patient has to pay more, leading hardship for some, and perhaps meaning that some patients are failing to seek medical help they need. Surely, this rebate should be raised now. And if the fund is drained, does this mean we will have to pay for our prescriptions and GP bills in total in the future? Instead, why not augment the fund now? Use the interest accrued annually to pay the GP rebate and our prescription charges. It will then be a sustainable fund going forward. The Jersey Care model, as presented, seems to be a top-down, UK-centric initiative, without input from those who deliver the care, and most definitely without proper public consultation. It seems there are many associated layers of management being introduced, and it begs the question, what are we doing? What problem are we trying to solve? We already have a well-functioning health service, of which we are rightly proud. GPs provide care 24 hours, 365 days a year. Family nursing gives care in our homes. We have hospice, community physiotherapy, remote monitoring of our cardiac problems. We already have preventative programmes. We do not need to spend £58 million planning a new care model. There are always ways to make improvements, but creating systems and complicated pathways and bureaucracy is not the way forward. We need to let things evolve slowly. Keep things simple. Remember, in Jersey, we can talk to one another. Our frontline staff are our most valuable asset. We should be treasuring and cherishing them. I would like to say thank you to our amazing GPs and all other primary care providers, and indeed all our frontline staff in the hospital and in the community. They need our support and they need investment from the government. It is only if they are sufficiently remunerated and well treated that we will be able to attract and retain our vital staff. So any new hospital should have all the services and facilities that we currently enjoy. It will be Jersey's only hospital. The current plans need to be challenged. Islanders should not be shortchanged. Thank you.
One too far. Right. I'd like to now introduce you to Graham Bisson, who is an agriculturist of long standing and a Jerseyman of long standing, and one of the leaders of the agricultural section who led the promotion of our potato in the UK. Graham has been a steadfast friend for many years and is going to give us a very personal tale this evening. Graham.
Good evening, everybody. The example I'm going to share with you is not only up to date, but it is also a personal one. In October, November 2019, the promoters of the Jersey Care model went on a parish hall roadshow where they publicly stated, healthcare that was free then would be free in the future. We were also assured that the quality of services would be every bit as good, if not better. On the 12th of May this year, the Health Minister, Deputy Rja&Hs, in an email stated, services that are free at the point of access will continue to be free, regardless of where these services are delivered. On the 18th of June this year, Ms Caroline Landon, the Director General for Health, during a health scrutiny meeting said, what was previously free in the past would be free in the future, and if anybody had a problem, they should send her their details. I have done that, and all that's happened has been bounced around from one civil servant to the other. With these prominent people all reiterating the same message, one would have thought that this was the truth. But in fact, this is not the truth. If it is not the truth, then it must be a lie. Some of our states members and civil servants seem to have great difficulty in being honest. In June last year, the Health Service closed Samarai Ward at Overdale. I think it's fair to say that Samarai Ward was a world-class head injury and stroke rehabilitation centre, but it was closed under the guise of the Health Service requiring it for COVID recovery purposes. In its place, we now have 2 small units with 6 beds for men and 6 beds for women on the Plymouth ward at the General Hospital. The equipment in this facility and the service provided is a shadow of its former self. I know this from first-class experience. Before the closure of Samarai, there was no limit on people staying there and no cost to the patient involved. Samarai had 28 en-suite rooms, but the hospital only has 12 beds in 2 small wards. Having received an inferior level of rehabilitation, a patient must now leave hospital after a maximum of 13 weeks and can only return home if the family can provide a satisfactory care package that is acceptable to the authorities. In circumstances or personal finance don't allow for this, the states will put them into a nursing home chosen by the states. Returning to our personal experience, on the 12th of December last year, my wife of 55 years had a serious stroke and spent the following 13 weeks in this replacement facility on Plymouth ward, where her care was nothing like that which she would have received had she been in Samarai. She is now back home. She has now been back home for 16 weeks and is unable to stand or to walk, but she is here tonight. With some difficulty, we were able to put a care package together which was acceptable to the authorities. Making alterations to our home and purchasing a second-hand disability vehicle cost us £46,000. However, by far the greatest difficulty was finding carers. Our allocated social worker from Social Security contacted all of the 22 care agencies with no success. The following week I contacted the same agencies and fortunately found 3 who were able to help. The agency we chose, which we are very pleased with, provide 2 carers who come in at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. for an hour each time. That leaves me as principal carer for 22 hours a day. That is a huge commitment. Anybody who knows my wife will know that she is a lady who never complains about anything. Is there anybody else in the room who doesn't complain? Any lady doesn't complain about anything else? No, you all complain. But after 3 weeks at home and with no physiotherapy provided, she said to me, "I really feel as if I have been neglected and I am worse now than the day I left hospital. Without considerable physiotherapy and occupational therapy, progress is not possible." After several weeks, I contacted the hospital and they offered my wife 1 hour per week of physiotherapy up at Overdale. When asked how long that would last, the answer was, we have no idea. After 6 weeks of 1 hour's treatment per week, the following 3 weeks were cancelled, one after the other, at short notice because there was no physiotherapist available. Because of the situation, we have had to employ a private physiotherapist for 2 1-hour sessions per week. In addition, we have made private arrangements for my wife to have 2 half-hour sessions in the aqua pool at the Jersey Cheshire home. Our homemade care package, is now costing us £65,000 a year. That's £5,400 a month, or £1,250 per week. On the 1st of June this year, the General Hospital employed 76 physiotherapists and 30 occupational therapists. My wife is a Category 4 patient, and at the moment, the current long-term care payment for Category 4 patients is £1,094 per week, or £56,888 per year. This means that after we have paid the first £58,230 to reach what the long-term care call their threshold, the shortfall between what Category 4 patients receive and what our care package is costing us at the moment will be £19,000 per annum. To add insult to injury, the cost of private physiotherapy, the aqua pool at Jersey Cheshire home, and the cost of home improvements are not considered to be care costs by the authorities, and therefore do not go towards the long-term care threshold that needs to be met before any long-term payments are made. As far as we're concerned, every part of the care package that we have put in place is very much a care cost, as each one is absolutely essential to her well-being and recovery. In summary, by following the lead of a team of senior civil servants who care little and understand even less about our island, our states members have willfully voted to deny us access to previously provided world-class care funded and delivered by the state, without so much as a proper debate. In its place, they have managed to inflict us with the Jersey care model, a do what you can at home with whatever funds you have available scenario, in which the state has simply turned its back on its citizens. Over the last 4 years, our group has spent an incredible amount of time researching and studying all the expensive reports that have been produced. We are passionate about this island and our future healthcare in particular, but also very concerned about the way we are being governed. It has become abundantly clear that our current Council of Ministers is weak and inept. They lack any sign of original thought and have relinquished all authority, handing it to the unelected Director Generals, carefully selected by the disruptive and squandering former CEO, Charlie Parker. This is crippling our island. Our island is being mismanaged and systematically bankrupted. Everyone knows it, and it would seem that the majority of islanders have reached a state of despair. Surely something can be done. Enough is enough. Nothing will improve until the current Council of Ministers is removed. For those of you who chose to be here tonight instead of watching 22 people chasing a ball, thank you for coming.
An extremely powerful story, and one that those of us who are on the steering committee with Graham have lived through, along with his wife, for many months now. Let me now introduce you to Tamara van Meglen. Tamara is a Canadian lawyer who transferred here from Toronto to carry on her work in financial services. She settled into a lovely house overlooking St. Helier with a rural setting, only to be presented earlier this year with the prospect of a superhighway running through her garden. She is a member of our steering group, and she is a leader of the Westmount Residents Group. Tamara.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We have yet to hear a viable reason for the proposed superhighway, carving up to a 12-meter wide path up Westmount Hill, costing an estimated $38 million, including parish and private land acquisition. The proposed plans, if approved, would materially alter the west side of town, destroy the 112-year-old Bulls Club, homes, agriculture, and green space, the historic rock outcrop, and drastically alter the gradient of the hill. It will remove more than 140 public parking spaces along People's Park to create a new lane of traffic, and all without a green travel plan or any meaningful traffic impact studies yet. UK best practice in hospital design is to start any new hospital build with a green travel plan. That's to find ways to promote more sustainable transport modes, particularly reducing the private car trips. As hospital parking consists of about 2/3 of staff parking, it's no surprise that it's vital to incorporate the workplace travel plan, which is something the Jersey government has supported for more than a decade. However, on this particular project, we've been told that the green travel plan will only be produced just in time for the planning application for the road and the hospital, which is to be submitted later this year, completely backwards as to how it ought to be. It's important to note that Overdale Hospital site has been assessed, and I'm sure you recall, 3 times previously for a hospital. And each time, minimal road alterations were proposed, including in 2016 when Arup, the main highway contractor on this project, assessed it. What was the difference? In 2016, Arup produced a green travel plan as part of its proposal up front. Remember Senator Farnham's statement to the media? Only 3 homes will be destroyed. Well, we're now up to 12 homes, and that's to make room for a 4-story car park on top of the hill. Remember the promise by multiple politicians to find the bowling club a home? Still not happening. St. Helier Parish has held 2 parish assemblies on the proposed sale of the parish lands for the access road, in both of which they voted overwhelmingly against what was proposed. I've been advised by a member of the St. Helier Roads Committee that they too have rejected the proposed road plans in principle and are disappointed with the lack of engagement from the project committee, failure to produce a green travel plan that has now resulted in allocating 700 parking spaces in the current proposals. The current hospital has 150. Going back to the 2020 site evaluation report, which was about the 5 shortlisted sites, it's quite revealing. In that report, the contractors state access to the Hilltop Overdale site is challenging, and the Westmount Road is narrow, has tight bends, and cannot accommodate the large equipment needed for construction and will require significant enhancements. No mention of needing the road for the hospital. When we pointed out that so much damage for construction purposes just wasn't a good enough reason, then we were told, oh no, it's not for construction, it's because the ambulances need a straighter road. Then we mentioned ambulances go up and down Westmount every single day right now. When the State's Assembly voted for Overdale, they passed an amendment to review alternative and more sustainable transport options. The project team duly produced a report several weeks later, which was last December, purporting to analyze 71 different alternative ways to get to Overdale. But it was nothing more than lines on Google Maps, and unsurprisingly, they concluded their current plans were still the best one. But it is interesting to note that the do-nothing option to Westmount Road scored only marginally lower than their current plans on a 38 criteria point rating. The professional peer review report that the scrutiny panel ordered noted there was a severe lack of information to support the proposed Westmount Road option at the time. It criticized the lack of serious consideration to the do-nothing option, considering time was the biggest priority of the project, and noted that it didn't contain the sustainable transport plan that was required by the state's amendment. The states passed it anyway and kicked the whole matter over to planning. We've been told the number one priority for this project is time. Therefore, finding options to remove the costly and complex road construction should be appealing, but it hasn't been seriously pursued. The project team continually tell us that Westmount Road must be 24/7 access, and it has to be two-way for resilience. What if the road gets closed? So we pointed out that the current hospital is accessed by a series of one-way roads. The lead road engineer actually called Westmount dangerous during one of the public meetings. I submitted a Freedom of Information request and found out that in the last 4 years, there's been 2 minor road accidents on Westmount, and only one of them involved 2 cars. The road was closed for a total of 5 minutes in the last 4 years. Hardly a dangerous road. We've been told that the road needs to be 6.7 meters wide. The average Jersey road, 4.7. And you'll be forgiven for thinking that might be a hospital safety requirement, because it's not. The project team tells us at almost every meeting they have instructions from the Infrastructure, Housing, and Environment Department that Westmount Road must be wide enough for 2 Liberty buses to pass each other up the hill. Really? They've estimated that there's going to be 4 buses per hour going up to Overdale once the hospital's built. And the project team has conceded that not all those buses are going to come back down Westmount, so they're not going to pass each other anyway. And of course, you can always alter a bus schedule by 5 minutes so it doesn't pass each other on the hill and save 38 million pounds. And then there's the gradient, the steepness of the hill. Anyone who's walked or cycled up Westmount knows it's pretty difficult. To bring Westmount closer to accessibility standards, the team is proposing to raise the level of the road by 6 meters over the bowling green by pouring thousands of tons of infill and then lowering the hairpin turn by 3 meters so that they meet. Large embankments on either one or both sides of the road are going to be necessary to support these huge height changes. The sheer scale of this alteration means a 3D computer-generated image is surely necessary to understand what this looks like, but it hasn't been produced yet. And what's more, that 38 million pounds is only alterations to Westmount Road and the new lane of traffic on People's Park. Only minor junction amendments have been proposed for the surrounding road network. Notably, the alternative road ambulance access route from the north, St. John's Road, is at places narrower than Westmount. So when they finally get around to doing traffic impact studies, are we in for even more road amendments? We don't know. This is not a town issue, but one for every taxpayer in Jersey. At an estimated cost of $38 million and many months of construction, unless and until we have a green travel plan that truly informs the design of the road and not the other way around, the Westmount Road proposals should be scrapped. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce you to Mary Venturini, who many of you may know from our Overdale walks. Mary instituted the program we had of walking every day for 30 days from the bowling club to Overdale and down the old St. John's Road and back again. And this was to just demonstrate to as many people who could keep up with her what was going to happen at Overdale. And it was to provide a close-up. We all thought Mary was out of her mind when she proposed this walk. And in the end, we had over 200 people walking with us, including Senator Farnham and other assembly members. So we did reach the parts of the heart that were hard to reach. When we finished that walk, Mary then said we all had to walk from St. Albans Parish Hall to Lekenebe School just to prove how difficult it was to get to Lekenebe. There weren't as many of us who took that charge up, but we did carry on. Mary is a lifetime Jersey resident, and when she's not walking with the friends, she is the publisher of Rome's leading English language newspaper. Mary.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you all for coming, and thank you for all of you who were walkers, and I hope one day will be walkers again. We've just heard about Westmount and Overdale site from Tamara, so I'm going to take you on a quick walk, you don't have to move, around Llacheneve, the Cinderella of the hospital story, the elephant in this room. For a start, I'll just point out that the conversion of the old school at Llacheneve, which dates back to the early 1960s, is hardly mentioned in the island bridging plan, even though there's a special section on development at Llacheneve. It's considered what is called a key opportunity site once its intended use of health and community services has concluded. That's to quote from page 30 of the island plan. This tells us two things. The move of services from Overdale to Llacheneve, which we first heard about in January this year, was clearly a rushed afterthought, like so much else in this hospital story. But it's also an indication that this building is considered to be only temporary. So we are spending a small fortune, at least 17 million, on a building that only has a limited lifetime. However, Llacheneve is of vital importance to the smooth functioning of the whole hospital plan, because it has to house the services that are now at Overdale until the new hospital is ready. Then most of those services, but not all, are scheduled to return to the new hospital. The plans for repurposing of Llacheneve from school to medical centre are to be submitted for a planning application at the end of this month. All being well, construction should begin early in 2022, with completion by the end of that year, not the beginning of 2022, as we were originally told back in January. At the same time, an application for demolition for at least some buildings at Overdale will also be submitted at the end of this month, with work to start probably early in 2022. So, demolition will start at Overdale before Llacheneve is ready. Just think about this a moment. Demolition will start while medics are still working there and while patients are still going there for consultations. Even if it is only the buildings not in use that are to be demolished at the moment, these are the most dangerous, containing asbestos, and they are at the far end of the site. Just imagine going to Overdale for an appointment and dodging your way past diggers, earth movers, heavy trucks as they dismantle asbestos-filled buildings. Most people would agree that this is dangerous, but members of the hospital team can't make up their minds. First, they admitted that it was dangerous and that demolition would not begin until all services had moved from Overdale to Llacheneve. Now they're saying they have to get on with demolition, that they are in a hurry because work is behind schedule. Endanger lives because you're in a hurry? Here is another consideration. Building starts at Llacheneve, if all goes well with the July planning application, at the beginning of next year, before the plans for the new hospital at Overdale and the access road have been approved. What happens if they're not approved? We shall have a temporary medical centre going up at Llacheneve at the cost of 16 million. That's the price today. But the cost has already mushroomed from 5 million to 17 million since January. So who is to say that it suddenly won't go up again before the end of this year? So what if the planning application for Overdale and the access road fail? We have a very expensive temporary building to house medical services at Llacheneve, which is supposed to return to Overdale, but can't. What's the logic in that? Now let's move to Llacheneve itself. While the old school is being converted, all the residents around the site will have to put up with the comings and goings of heavy construction vehicles in the narrow roads around their homes. Lekeneve Old School also has issues with asbestos. Let's hope that there is an environmental impact assessment report before all this gets going. One final thought. At the moment, there are over 200 people working at Overdale, most of whom probably live around St Helier. In future, they will have to drive or be persuaded to take public transport or to bicycle to Lekeneve. And the consultants now working at Gloucester Street will have to drive to Lekeneve for consultations, probably at best 30 minutes each way. And what about the patients? We still haven't been told how many appointments there are at Overdale each day. Where will all these people park? The hospital team is confident that this is all sorted, but many of the residents are not so sure. So, what are our recommendations for action? And here I believe we really can act, and act quickly. Number one, that demolition at Overdale does not begin before all the buildings have been vacated. Number two, that construction at Lekeneve does not begin before the planning application for the new hospital at Overdale has been approved. Number three, no approval for any of these applications should be given without an environmental impact assessment report. Now, I just have some slight news, hot news at the end. 7 months ago, on the 7th of January, I started walking up and down Westmount, roundabout Overdale and down St John's Old Road. Today is the 7th of July. On the 7th of January next year, exactly 6 months' time from now, I'm starting the walks again. So I hope all of you can join me and we'll go round again and see what's happening at Overdale and report back to you as soon as we can. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mary. I'd like to introduce you now to Stephen Regal. Stephen has been in the construction business here in Jersey for over 50 years. He started his career, as many of us know, with a shovel and ended it having created one of the largest construction companies in the island. He is an expert in construction. He has a thorough knowledge of the island's construction, and he knows what contracting with the government is all about. Stephen.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, everybody, for attending on this very special day for England, and I appreciate you attending. My little piece is on the complexities of quantifying building construction costs. Our government has a fiduciary and indeed legal responsibility to the electorate for the expenditure of all public finances in order to ensure that all such monies are expended in an appropriate and fitting manner. The government also has a responsibility to be completely transparent in the manner in which public funds are expended. Yes, indeed, commercial confidentialities must be adhered with. However, the secrecy with which the management of the contract for the building of our new hospital has been carried out appears to have breached the transparency that a democratic government owes to the electorate. First, let us examine the cost of the new hospital and how that cost has been incorporated in the contract with Rock FCC, the appointed contractor. The contract was undertaken prior to the site being selected and the design being finalised. The evaluation of the cost of capital projects by any government is usually accompanied by a rigorous tender process by which costs submitted by competing construction companies are fairly compared. In other words, a level playing field. A normal tender process usually starts with the production of drawings and specifications, providing a common starting point, along with bills of quantity setting out the extent of the works in sufficient detail to enable the works to be costed by competent contractors. The tenders are then compared, ensuring that each contractor is pricing identical works of an identical specification. It is unclear whether the government carried out a tender process at all prior to selecting RoC-FCC as the contractor for our hospital project. Indeed, government has not shared this information in an open forum. The alternative to contracting by tender is a design and build contract, under which the contractor enters into a partnership with the employer. In this case, the contractor assumes responsibility not only for the construction works, but also for the design of the project. Thus, the contractor can provide its expertise, experience, and value to the works. The contractor is effectively working in partnership with the employer. However, design and build contracts are not as straightforward as it might appear. The relationship between contractor and employer must be cost analysed at every step of the way. In order to ensure that the employer is gaining value for money in the relationship. This requires a challenging and recordable analysis of the contractor's costs and charges. This analysis may take many approaches. One might be, as in this case, as a result of the lack of selection of site selection at the time, and thus any design for the building. It might be for the contractor to provide an extensive tabular bill of rates indicating the charges for many, or in fact most of the items of work to be carried out for the entire construction project. This bill of rates is a pro forma document providing individual costs of many, if not all, of the work items. These will include the costs of demolition work, the excavation of the site in all its various forms, through to the supply and placing of the concrete, the associated reinforcement and temporary formwork, followed by the blockwork construction and the various follow-on trades, including plastering, timberwork, decoration, roof works, and the plethora of labour and material items required for the entire construction works. The Bill of Rates will be an extensive and comprehensive document. It should also encompass the specialist trades, including mechanical and electrical works, special finishes, windows, doors, and the multitude of elements making up the estimated costs of the construction project. We have asked the government for details of the process that led to them entering into the design and build contract with RoC-FCC. The government has failed to reply. As far as I can see, there is no evidence in the public domain that the government has gone through the rigorous methodology and effective examination required by a competitive process before selecting RoC-FCC as their contractor. At first glance, it would appear that speed, rather than proficiency and efficiency, is driving this process. What is the result of the government failing to carry out competitive contractor selection process? I have used a simple methodology to compare the stated costs of the proposed new hospital at Overdale with general costs of new hospital construction in the various regions of the United Kingdom. I concede that there are some elevated construction costs here in Jersey in comparison to the UK, and I've taken these into account. The cost differences are primarily due to elevated transportation costs, higher wages and salaries, and a generally higher cost of living in Jersey when compared to the United Kingdom. However, the cost of our plans for our 68,000 stated square metres of hospital appears to be inordinate when comparisons are made with hospital construction projects in the UK in recent years. This includes taking into account the Jersey weighting percentage and the projected inflationary costs between now and the proposed construction date of 2026. Using data published on the internet by Statistica, an authoritative internationally recognised information source, the average cost of construction of new hospitals in the UK varied from a low of £2,604 per square metre for a regional hospital in the Central Belt to a high of £3,780 per square metre in London for a general hospital. These figures are based upon data published up to the period of 2018. Obtaining the equivalent numbers for our hospital is somewhat complicated, as our government is particularly reluctant to provide actual numbers. However, If we just take the established projected tender cost for our hospital of £412.2 million and divide it by the published size of the hospital at 68,000 square metres, we arrive then at a cost of £6,161 per square metre, more than twice that of a London hospital. If we take the overall cost inclusive of the currently budgeted contingency sum, which we all know is going to be spent, amounting to £805.5 million, then the cost rises to a staggering £11,845 per square metre. The additional cost of inflation from 2018 to 2026 has been approximately assessed as 35%. The additional cost of the so-called Jersey weighting I have assessed at 15%. Taking these costs into consideration, the discrepancy between the building of a new hospital in central London and here in Jersey is in the region of a staggering 200%. The government has disputed our analysis. We await their publication of the facts and figures required to prove their case.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you all my colleagues. I've been asked to just end this, our presentations by giving you a little discussion on finance. We've called this Financing the Unknown because our government has published so little information on both the cost of the hospital and the cost of the Jersey Care model. Two vital healthcare projects that need to be financed. We have an idea of what the government has spent or committed to spend on our new hospital project to date. We spent £45 million on the defunct Gloucester Street project, which is now written off. We spent £15 million on a kitchen in St. Peter's. We spent £30 million, or we're currently spending £30 million with ROK FCC to prepare plans and a planning application. We've spent £38 million, or at least set it aside to pay for an access road and Overdale property purchases. And we spent $17 million, or look as if we're about to spend $17 million, as Mary said, for the conversion of the Kennebec Old School. Plus, we have been running unknown costs, overheads, estimated at £150,000 per day. It's not our figure, that's Senator Farnham's figure. And the list goes on. We have spent or committed in excess of £145 million, and at the moment, we do not have a shovel in the ground. As for the Jersey Care model, our government has committed to spend £58 million over the next 3 years, having spent £5 million or more on consultants. The budget for the Jersey Care model has yet to be established. The financing requirements for our hospital project include a £550 million budget, a £255 million contingency fund, or set aside, or a total of £805 million. How does our government intend to finance it? They have not announced any plans. They have suggested that we could finance this staggering sum by raising a new long-term debt and a contribution from the strategic reserve. Our government has total assets in excess of £6.5 billion. We have a strategic reserve fund valued at £968 million at the end of 2020. We have very few outstanding liabilities. We are eminently creditworthy. But borrowing money is the easy part. We could easily borrow £400 million to put towards that £805 million budget. On a 30 to 40-year fixed interest rate bond at, say, 3.5% interest, that could readily be achieved. But we would incur £400 million of interest to repay that bond. Our £805 million hospital could cost us in excess of $1.2 billion. Financing the Jersey care model is equally unknown. To begin with, the government has raided, and I don't use that term without hesitation, the health insurance fund for £58 million, as I say. The health insurance fund was valued at £108 million at the end of 2020. The fund is intended to support our cost of GPs, pharmaceuticals, and care. At this rate, not much will be left. The government assumes the Jersey care model will make us healthier, thus reducing demand for health services. The savings are illusory. What's the conclusion? No one outside government can fully understand the government's finances. On available information, the government has a huge amount of money, has already spent a huge amount of money on the hospital. Financing the Jersey care model is a raid on the health insurance fund, pure and simple. Financing and the cost of financing is uncertain. Yet the government goes on with their ill-defined plans. It is amazing. It is extraordinary. And I think, in addition to finance, what you've heard tonight is a cross-section of things we have been working on for how many years? 3, 4, 5. All we are trying to do as a group is to provide information to the public. I have a slide. This is the problem with that. Information is the oxygen of our democracy. Information in our hands allows us to think, it allows us to make decisions, it allows us to proceed in the best possible and united manner. We have been denied that information in relationship to the hospital project. We have been denied that information in relationship to the future of our health care here in the island. Our role, our goal has been to get you to come to this meeting, to get you to hear, to get you to listen, to engage, and to get the rest of the island to engage in what we do next. And what we do next is an unknown. We have a political system that consists of 49 assembly members, 24 of whom are in government as ministers or assistant ministers, and they are pledged to follow the leader, and they do, which leaves a very small minority to raise any kind of question. Dissent is not a bad word. Dissent is what makes democracy go around. And what we need more of is an opportunity to present the case for the best healthcare system, the best hospital, and the best service for our citizens to the states of Jersey. How do we do that? We do it by doing more of what we're doing. The outcome has to be a benefit to us all. What we've seen tonight, I would summarize in just 3 short sentences. We have the wrong hospital, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. And the question is, what next? That is our hour, almost to the minute. So those of you who want to skittle off and see the soccer, please do. We'll take a 2-minute break to let you exit. Those of you who wish to stay, please stay. And what we'll do now is have some questions and answers. Over to you. You've hurt us all, and thank you for your patience. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, unfortunately, with COVID restrictions, we cannot pass microphones around, and we can't have a standing mic because if more than one person apparently goes to a standing mic, we have to do certain things and so on. So anyway, if you do have a question, please raise your hand, state it, and what I will do is try and repeat that as clearly as possible. Please.
I'd just like to give a little patient's insight.
Sorry?
I'd like to give a little patient's insight.
A little patient's insight.
Into salary law.
Right, okay, well. Would you like, it'd be much easier to hear you. I must say, we don't have a lot of time,
No, I'm just
please,
going to be very quick.
please.
I promise you'll be very quick.
No,
I just
don't have to
wanted to
promise
give you
anything.
a little, I'll try not to be too long. I just wanted to give you a little patient's insight into something that we are losing, which is very, very close to my heart. If I can take you back 16 years in September, I'd been teaching at Trinity School. I went home, I felt a little bit funny. I collapsed and I had rather a massive brain hemorrhage. I was taken onto a ward in the hospital in the general initially. I got very distressed. I was put on a ward. The lady next door was shouting. The television was on. I couldn't cope with this. My brain was actually bleeding at that time. And they put me in a private room. 2 days later, they said to me, "You've been very, very lucky. We've got you a room on Samaray in our new rehabilitation unit." And I moved up to Samaray. I had my own ward, I had my own television, I had my own phone. I had difficulty speaking, swallowing, sitting. I needed a lot of help. I suffered from severe, excruciating fatigue. Nobody knows what fatigue is like when you've had a stroke. It's like another illness. But I had the staff to help me. I had an outstanding multidisciplinary team. I cried, I grieved, I'd lost half my body, but I could grieve in my own room. I could have my visitors in my own room. I could have flowers. I could have my new baby granddaughter in my own room. I could be taken outside for a walk in a wheelchair. And I spent 3-4 months in Samaray. And then when I was ready, I went home. And when I got home, I still had some support at home. And I sail, I drive, I do everything. I do everything because of the treatment I had at Samaray Ward. Physiotherapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, dietitians, the whole gamut. They were all neurologically trained to deal with people who had strokes. At the moment, the government is not treating people with brain and spinal cord injury with respect. This display a lack of knowledge and awareness of what these patients need. They cannot put them on a ward. It is not fair. It is not fair on that patient. I have a quote from Caroline Landon that Samaray Ward is a waste of resources. It's creating a dependency. I couldn't even sit on my own. I couldn't go to the toilet on my own. Obviously, I had dependency. Stroke creates a dependency on other people. And it's only from the good work that I had and the conditions I was in Samaray that I became independent that I am now. I'm afraid I get very upset about it. I get very upset they are knocking Samaray Ward down. I've threatened to lie down in front of it. We cannot let this happen. We cannot let that amazing team up there who have lost they are stressed, people have left, the community neurological team, they have left, they are stressed, they are stretched, they are broken. And this government is doing it to us, to me, the people in the future. I would have lost the will to live had I gone into a nursing home or if I'd been sent home before I was ready. That's my insight.